Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Fabulous show. I am your host this week, Gloria Grace Rand, and we are going to be having a fantastic discussion, I know, all about honoring your heritage, which is what I'm doing right now, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But you know what? Let's just get right to it and let's talk. Yes, hello, hello. I am so delighted to be with you today on this fabulous Sunday. And I've got a great group of wonderful people here today, and I'm going to first have them introduce themselves to you. So if we can go on I always get confused, the person next to me in the box here, Marina, if you can just share who you are and where you're from right now.
I am Marina Shakour Haber, and I live in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida.
All right, awesome. And next to you is, I'm going to go ahead and let you say your name so I don't butcher
it. My name is Noemi Beres, and I live in Cyprus in Europe.
Welcome. All right. And then down below, you, Noemi, we've got, go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Sarah Sims here. I live in Maryland, just about 20 miles outside of Washington, D.C.
All right. Awesome. And last but certainly not least, we've got Kenya over there.
Hi, I'm Kenya Lee, and I currently reside in Venice, California, but I am from Detroit, Michigan.
All right. Yay. Another Michiganian, because that's where I'm from as well. So yeah, so we are going to be talking about heritage today, about honoring your heritage. And yes, and that, as I alluded to in the beginning there, I'm proud to be part Hungarian. That's where my grandparents were from. So I don't know where this shirt came from. I don't know if my grandmother picked it up or my mother found it, but anyway, I've had it with me. And so I thought I would wear that today to honor my heritage. But I'm going to go ahead and actually we're going to play one of our wonderful videos here today, because it's also from someone who shares her heritage with me.
Hello, this is Noemi here. I live in Cyprus in Europe. Originally, I'm from Hungary, and I moved here 13 years ago. And my family's history plays a very important role in my life, because I am a mixed media collage artist, which also means that I make hands-on collages on canvas. And as you can see behind me, all these pictures sewn together, they are from my family's history from Hungary. I sew my family's history together. And this is like a kind of a virtual diary for me. And I want to share this with the world where I come from. And I'm proud of my heritage. And I'm very interested in sharing my stories with you and my collages through my collages.
Well, I love that. And so I'm gonna pop you in here, Noemi. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about what got you interested even in being able to do this as a way to be able to honor, your background, where your family is from.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was born and raised in Hungary, and I have Hungarian heritage, like Gloria, and that connects us, which is wonderful. And yeah, I was always a creative type of, person since I was in my teens. And then when I was basically expecting my son, who is now 12 years old, so that was 12 years ago, I, made up my mind, and something just came to me, and I want to make collages. I want to be a mixed media collage artist. So I just started to make collages, and it's that's my jam. And I just love using old postcards, old photos, lace, different textiles from Hungary, and different motifs from Hungary. And I just want to, it's kind of my heritage, as I mentioned in my video, it plays a very important role in my life because my son was born and raised basically in Cyprus. So I don't want him to lose his connections to my mother country, which I left 20 years ago. So it's kind of an homage to my heritage and homage to my family. And I only have my mom left in Hungary, so I don't have a big family. So this is kind of my story.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm wondering if anybody else has, do you like have keepsakes or things like that are part of your family that you keep as well?
Yes, absolutely. When my son was born, I made this baby box, and I kept all these keepsakes from the time when he was tiny and he was baby, and I keep these. I don't use them for collages because they're very, very personal. But like I use postcards from my family trips I took to Venice with my grandparents. You can see that above me. That's one of the postcards I bought when I was about 7-8 years old. And my grandparents took me to Venice, to Italy. And I just loved it, and it really inspired me. And because I always keep things, I'm not a hoarder, but I keep things and I use them for my collages. So yeah, these are my keepsakes basically that you can see behind me and many other places in my home.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. How about any of the rest of you on the panel? Do you have keepsakes or things like that there are special memories that you have in your family?
Well, for me, Gloria, absolutely. I came up with my great grandmother and her sisters, and they were collectors of many artistic pieces. And I can remember as a child, little marble eggs on the table of a brass weight, so to speak, a scale. And so I was so intrigued with that. And they had told me that they had it for years. It had been passed down. So those little things that I can connect to my childhood that, gives me comfort and the warm, fuzzy feelings of being a child, I definitely hold on to them, as well as my grandmother's old dishes. She was a craftswoman herself, and so she would paint small figurines, and so those things are dear to me, and I definitely keep them, and I want to pass them on to my daughter as well.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. In fact, I saved a cookie jar that was my grandmother used to have in her house, that whenever I used to visit her, she had filled with butter cookies. And so I actually have that cookie jar now. It's one of these green glass things. And I just love that because it's a way for me to also be able to, keep her in mind. Kenya, I'm going to go ahead and actually, actually before I do that, does anybody else have anything else that you want to comment about, any other piece of memorabilia or anything like that you guys have? Marina or Sarah?
Well, I have from my mother, I have this blue lapis necklace, which she wore all the time. And she loved navy blue, but it's also the Persian stones, the Persian lapis, which connects me to my birth country, Iran. And the artistic crafts of Iran. I have a few of the things that she collected. A huge silver plate that serves as a table, and silver dishes. It's just that I love the craftsmanship and the culture that goes with it, and the ancient culture, but mostly the wisdom of the Persian people, the Persian people that I so much love and honor and respect.
I love that. That's so cool. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to play another one of our videos that one of our guests shared with us, and we'll continue this conversation.
I personally believe that our cultural heritage plays a huge part in who we are, whether it be unknowingly or knowingly. For me, as an African American woman, coming from a history of having my ancestors be slaves and going through very traumatic times and very rough living. I think that somehow gives me a sense of empowerment to be able to know that I'm resilient no matter what. And also it sheds light on a lot of cultural norms that may have a negative connotation because of the history. So I think the best way to reconcile any difficulties in terms of heritage is to first acknowledge it. Good, bads, uglies, and all. Acknowledge it, understand it, and then with that understanding, be able to compartmentalize what you can take from it from a positive standpoint.
Well, I'd love to hear from you a little bit more about that because, I know we're talking about that, it is wonderful that we can, remember some of the positive things that happen, but, we also have to be honest. Sometimes there's things with our heritage that are a little more serious. And so, I wonder if you can elaborate more on what you were talking about there, Kenya.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the Black culture, is a culture that is completely mixed with all different sorts of people from different regions. And for us, it's not as simple as tracing something back to say, as you guys, Hungary or, a specific place. We may be able to say Africa or the Caribbean, but actually being able to narrow it down to one specific region is a bit difficult because of slavery, because of oppression. So these things definitely, and what I was speaking about in the video is that despite the negative parts of it, we have to figure out a way to move around it and grasp the positives. And for me, it's always the resilience despite oppression. I think about my grandmother and the stories that she told me of, having to engage in domestic work because there was limited education for her, and at a time that it was just very hard. And so those things play a part in me, even right now when I think back to those stories, or I just go back even further to slaves coming over to the US. Those things are there. It's what it is. But I think it's important for us to understand that we're in a different place now, and we have to try to move on to make things better. And at the same time, identifying the strengths that we possess with our ancestors. And so for me, it's definitely overcoming challenges. In my work right now is about resilience, overcoming, traumas and so forth. And that leads me right back to my history, my ancestry. So, yeah.
What advice would you have for someone who maybe is trying to be able to find that positive in looking at their heritage and trying to be able to reconcile that? Because I love your attitude. I think it's great. But what would you advise someone?
I would advise someone to look within themselves first, because before we can start having any opinions or taking apart different areas outside of us, we have to see who we are first. And so when we look within and understand where we are, it better assists us in understanding other things around us. And that's not any different than our ancestry. So if someone is having difficulty with reconciling, what has happened, what's even happening now, we all know that there are injustices that are taking place right now. But if we are keen and understand who we are and what legacy we want to lead and want to lead, then that strengthens our position to be able to reconcile that.
Yeah, I love that. Anybody else want to comment on this?
No, I can definitely appreciate everything that King is saying, because lacking heritage or the knowledge of a deep rooted awareness of your heritage is sometimes so challenging that you really do have to start with yourself. You really do have to start with how do you want to create the heritage for the generations after you. And I think that, King, as you spoke about your great grandmother and your aunts and having those experiences with them, that was them creating it. Maybe sometimes our grandparents and their elders didn't have a heritage, so they created it for us. And if you're without it, that might require you to decide, what do I want my children's children to remember of myself and my presence in the world. And I can definitely tell you that, my grandmother, she migrated from the South, escaping the Jim Crow era, where the only work you could find was domestic work, tending to someone else's child or cleaning their homes. But it was very clear that that was not the expectation of us as her children and her grandchildren. We were to go to school. We were to learn. She took us to museums. She took us to experiences that were not afforded to her as a young child. But she made sure that they showed up for us, so that if we wanted to clean homes, it was by choice. It was not by force.
Wow. I love that. In fact, I'm going to do if I could do this. There we go. And that was for like this whole conversation that we've been having, even especially because I love that. It's so important, and just I do think it's something that our parents and our grandparents, I think that's one commonality, is that they really do usually want our, the generations that come after them to be able to, do better than the ones before. And, it's like, in my family, my sister and I were able to go to college, which my parents weren't able to do, because they always want, and I'm sure it sounds like it's been the same for you, is that your parents and grandparents, they want you to be able to have more opportunities. And I'm sure now, I don't know if any of you are parents, but you probably want the same for your children. I know I've certainly wanted that for mine as well. Let's see. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and I'm going to share this right now.
Hello, I am Marina Shakour Haber. My heritage is one of curiosity and open-mindedness, of allowing to experience and growth, walking into uncertainty and feeling rich and abundant. So how did that come about? My first heritage would be that to God. Furthermore, I grew up, my parents in my parents' home, of course, and the lineage was multinational, multicultural, multilingual, multi-societal, multi-religious, and of course traditions and foods were from all places. So what I was given was a rich and a wealth, an abundance in an environment that I grew up, that gave me the resources and resilience that would help me to go through any challenges in life. Thank you.
Well, I loved your take on this, Marina. So I would love for you to expand on that, because I was totally, it was not what I was expecting when I asked folks to submit a video. So yeah, share a little bit more about that.
All right, my heritage per se is I was born in Iran. My father was half Iranian, half German. My mother was Dutch, so there were a few cultures coming together. And until I was 8 years old, we lived in Tehran, and then we moved to Munich. So now comes the German, and we added some German heritage there. And then I lived in Paris. I added that, which was wonderful. my personal heritage. And then we moved to Canada, and then I moved over to the United States. So it's a melting pot of many, many things coming together. Throughout my life, I have somehow learned to not be attached to things, which is why I didn't emphasize that, because things can be taken from us. The things, though, that cannot be taken from us are the things that we learn, the things that we use, the things, as you said before, the things that change us from within, the things that give us resilience, help us grow, help us expand, help us become who we are, when we come from a wealth. I'm working with people who I notice are in impoverished states, mental states. It's black and empty for them. And I look at my life and I go, I turned things around and made even the lemon into the lemonade. I learned so much from it. And I find that that is my greatest heritage. And I learned that through my parents, who had this resilience, and a mixture of, my mother was the optimistic person, the cloud, the head in the cloud, while my father was the grounded man with the feet on the ground. So there was a great combination. And I learned also from him, especially, the selflessness, the dedication to family, the sacrifice, and the giving it all. And there was then the high spirit of my mom. So those are the things that I have taken with me. And it has served me well to get through the challenges of my life.
I love that. Yeah. And I think it's something we don't always think about, that, like I said, when I was originally thinking about this, thinking, more concretely about what are the types of, either traditions that we share, or even specific items and things like that. But to really focus more on the mindset. I love that. Anybody else have any, thoughts on this, about the importance of it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as Marina mentioned, I also lived in different countries. So as a teenager, I lived in Denmark as an exchange student for a year. And then, when the EU opened up in 2004, so we moved to Ireland with my husband. So we lived there for 7 years. And then we moved to Cyprus after Ireland, and we've been living here now for 13 years. And yeah, I mean, this is such a rich cultural experience to live in different cultures, experience different languages, meeting different people around the world, and it's just enriches our lives, and we just become more. We get so much from other cultures, and especially in Europe, because for us it's easier to move around, obviously, than in the US. So we have different countries all over us, and as you mentioned before, I just want to just say one more sentence about it. Do better than the one before. So like my parents, and they wanted me to have a better life than we're supposed to have in Hungary. And that's why we moved away in 2004. And now so many people struggles, especially younger families like us, because our children, they were born abroad, most of them, and they don't know how to preserve this heritage and how to keep this heritage alive. Because like my son is bilingual, perfect English, perfect British English, thanks to his, British private school, and he speaks very good Hungarian as well. But he's not a real Hungarian anymore. He's not Cypriot. I mean, because we live here, but we are not. I mean, he's not part of this community in that way. So it's going to be very tricky for these young European people for the upcoming years. Like, who would they identify themselves? Who are they? Who will they be? Because I know I'm Hungarian. I was born and raised there. I'm just living abroad. But for them, like hundreds, thousands of young people around the world, in the US, in Canada, everywhere, in Australia, and they are all from Hungary. And yes, and who they will be, what's their heritage? So it's a very interesting question, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because I think that with the way that we our families, we're not necessarily as close as we used to be. We have kids are living Like, my children, actually, one of mine is living in Europe right now. The other one is living, across the country from me. So how this is maybe raises a good question for the rest of you, is how can we, instill, thoughts about, how do we preserve, I guess, our family's heritage, and even if you don't know it, maybe how can you maybe even create a family heritage, or just from maybe your family that you're having right now. What are your thoughts about that?
Gloria, I would say for me, having a name of an African country, my mother named me Kenya. And so I went through life with this name. She had her reasons for naming me, but as far as I was concerned, I had never been there. I had never seen the land. I have never visited the people. And so I would meet people during my professional journey, and they would say, "Oh, Kenya, you have this name. Kenya is such a beautiful place," and I felt myself feeling a little bit down about that. And so when I was able to afford myself to visit Nairobi and do a full tour of the country, I promised myself that in the event that I have a child and name her namesake for a place, that she would not be, or he would not be foreign to it. And so sure enough, fast forward to now, I have a 4-year-old and her name is Egypt. And she got that name for a myriad of different reasons. My husband and I were married on the coast of Cairo. So that is a little bit differently for her in terms of why her name is what it is. But I made a pledge that, by the time she's 6 and able to understand, that I would definitely take her to Egypt, to Aswan, to these places. And so the language won't be foreign to her, she's learning Arabic. So I think that it's important for us to start where we are, as well as reflect on where we've been. As I said, for me, it was completely foreign. And when I went to Kenya, it was so eye-opening. It was so breathtaking. But that's something that for me, I wish I had had as a child, to give me a little bit stronger sense of the name. So,
That's excellent. Yeah, I love that. So cool. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can share. So, in my family, on my mother's side, my great uncle, he was one son of 11, I believe. So, it was 10 girls and one boy. And we were a relatively large family. So, this is my grandmother had 4 children. Some of her siblings had 8 children. And it's really easy for everyone to kind of go in their opposite direction because life happens. And so my uncle came up with this great idea when the majority of the children were quite young, to host Family Day. And Family Day is when all of the siblings, their children's children, the spouses, everyone come together, and we would join in his house in Maryland and just have a phenomenal time of activities, games. And you could guarantee to see your family every single year, at least your Maryland-based family, every single year. And I can just remember 2 generations later, my childhood, I was able to grow up and see so many of my cousins and my aunts and sustain these relationships that, had he not made that decision to cultivate community through a large and growing family, we would have lost. And as we grew up, he moved on. Everyone grows up. Some of these traditions get lost. In 2016, I was in a position, a financial and physical position, to host Family Day here near my hometown. And it was a great turnout, and it felt so good being able to cultivate something that my uncle started just 50 years ago, and to host that on behalf of my mother and her siblings and my own children. And to this day, so many of 4 generations later, cousins still know each other because we are intentional about coming together in family and in community at least once a year.
I love that. And in fact, this deserves this. So pay attention, everyone. Yes, make a note of that. I love that idea. That is so good. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do another share a little something else here for one of us.
One of my fondest memories of my heritage was growing up as a child. And my grandmother and I would go to local orchards to pick peaches and apples. Now, this seems pretty common, but this was something that my grandmother did in her hometown of South Carolina, which we were very far away from when I was growing up. So she was able to take something that she did with her mother and her siblings and bring that to life for her grandchild years later. Those experiences that started at the orchard culminated into yummy dishes that were also a part of our culture that we enjoyed with family. And I am able to still pass this on to my children to this day. So heritage meant so much to me because it included our community, it included food, and it included the ability to still be able to pass it down to our children.
I love it. It just kind of dovetailed really great with the family day. I love that. But yeah. So I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit more.
Sure.
Yeah.
So my grandmother, which I'm named after, her name is Sarah Sims. It's my paternal grandmother. She is from South Carolina. She and my grandfather are from Florence, South Carolina. Again, they migrated to the South for a variety of well-known reasons. It wasn't as safe. There were for Black people, there were very limited jobs, and so they came to DC separately, but found each other here. And a lot of my grandmother and grandfather's ways of living came with them. The way they cooked, the way they harvested, just living on the land and sending their children to the South. And me growing up, going to the South in the summertime, it was so much deeply rooted. The South was so deeply rooted in our lives here in Maryland. I've even been told that I have a Southern accent, and that's very much because of my grandmother and my dad. He has one himself, so it's just still with us. And during these summers, we're out of school, our parents were working. My grandmother, she had 14 grandchildren, and I feel like we all believe we spent equal amounts of time with her alone. And one of my fondest memories with her was every summer going to local orchards here in Maryland. And that memory stuck with me so much that when I created wrote my first book, Stress Less, How to Use Self-Care to Redefine Your Well-Being, the analogy I used to how to grow into your gift was from a tree. And the analogy here is when you take care of yourself, like having those moments with my grandmother taught me, rooted me in self-care and like being close to family and eating fresh foods, whole foods. And all of that was very much rooted in the tree of self-care that when I coach others, I'm coaching them from first. I'm going to give you a shout out. Start with yourself. When you take care of yourself, you are able to grow rich, delicious fruit. And it's your fruit. It's the fruit that was already inside of you. And so it was great to be able to use that analogy rooted from the experiences that I had with my grandmother, because she is 90 years old. She is still living to this day. And then I think it very much is because she knew how to take care of herself, and she used the best version of herself to take care of her family.
I love that. I love that memory, and it might be great to be able to inspire others out there who are watching and this today to maybe create their own memories. Does anybody else have like a favorite family memory that something that they really treasure? Anyone want to share? Yeah, go ahead.
So when I moved away from Hungary, I was in my early 20s, and I couldn't really cook. I just left university and I basically left the country. So my mom wrote basically a cooking book, like for me. That's her personal, all the Hungarian dishes that were just very traditional in our family. And she wrote every single dish down so I can make them. I can make them from scratch. And yeah, and I started to cook when I was in my early 20s, when we moved away first to Ireland. And I still cook Hungarian dishes for my family. And I love cooking from scratch because it's healthy, it's nutritious, and as Sarah mentioned, it's kind of part of our heritage and part of our culture. So my son loves all Hungarian food, and when we get back to grandma, it's amazing because she cooks the same thing as mom does, and she compares them, who cooks better. But it's so much fun, and I still have that cooking book. It's a bit old and worn now, but I still have it, and it's like it's a treasure for my mom, and that's the way I kept Hungarian traditions alive in this way, like cooking cuisine.
I love that, and in fact, actually, I grew up, my mom would make, she made like chicken paprikash for us. And then I had my grandmother's version of chicken paprikash. Well, I think my mother made hers a little bit more American style. And so I always actually preferred my mom's to my grandmother's, but I still love this. Anybody else have any favorite, memories of family that you cherish? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I have a number of favorite foods. I love the Iranian cuisine. It is just so rich with herbs, not really spices, but more with herbs and rice, and the contrast between sweet and maybe sour. So I still to this day cook my Persian dishes, some of my mother's Dutch dishes. And of course, then we adopted a lot of the other cultures that I'm not part of, but that's where we live and that's what we do. We add more to it. But I still, to this day, we celebrate. My husband is Jewish, so we do Hanukkah, we do Christmas, and then I celebrate Persian New Year, and we just add them on, just a little bit of everything. And of course, the Jewish New Year, we celebrate that. So I honor more traditions than probably most, but I think that's wealth, that's richness when you can do that. And also allow, when they were little, that they would appreciate the variety and not become so rigid. This is the only way. There are many ways. Allow it and enjoy it.
I love that. How about you, Kenya? You have a favorite memory?
Yes, being with my grandmother in the kitchen and her preparing soul food. I learned how to, even though I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, far away from the South, but she migrated from the South, Sarah, a little like your family. And, she'd have me as a little kid in the kitchen picking collard greens and showing me how to take the stems off and how to separate the leaves. And, even picking pinto beans. That was one of her dishes that she would make with smoked meat. And I just, I think back to those times as a little kid sitting at that kitchen table, and it was just the richness of what she was giving me that time and teaching me how to cook and that special time of, spending with her. And so I treasure it always. And so with that, I try and make a conscious, intentional decision to do that with my daughter in terms of cooking and making sure we're creating together, because those are the memories that really stick.
Absolutely. And, it's really, we've been talking on this show for a while now about legacy. And we've got one of our dear friends of the show has created an awesome video, which I think I want to see if I can show right now, because it really, really does capture this whole idea about legacy.
In the quiet moments, when the sun begins to rise, we find the strength within us. In the stories of our lives, not in gold or glory, but in hearts we've touched with grace, and the love we share with others in each kind and gentle face. Your legacy is the love you leave behind, in the hands you've held and the souls you've helped to find. It's the laughter in the children, the wisdom in the old. It's the light you sparked in others, in the stories that are told. Through the trials and the triumphs, in the battles that we fight, it's the courage and the kindness that will always shine so bright. In the lessons that we teach and the dreams that we inspire, in the way we lift each other higher and higher. Your legacy is the love you leave behind, in the hands you've held and the souls you've helped to find. It's the laughter in the children, the wisdom in the old. It's the light you sparked in others, in the stories that are told. In the final song you sung, and the curtains drawing near, it's the moments filled with love that will echo year to year. In the footprints on the path that guide the lost and blind, your legacy will live on in the hearts you've left behind. Your legacy is the love you leave behind, in the hands you've held, the souls you've helped to find. It's the laughter in the children, the wisdom in the old. It's the light you've sparked in others, in the stories that are told. So let's live with open hearts and give with all our might, for the legacy we leave is a beacon in the night, in the echoes of our actions, in the whispers of the wind. Our legacy of love is where it all begins. Our legacy of love is where it all begins.
Legacy will live on in the hearts you've left behind.
Oh, I love that video. I don't know about the rest of you. It's so good. I can't believe we're like this hour is flying by here right now. It's like I'm looking at the time. It's like, oh my goodness. So, I'm curious, and because I know I've done some work on this, and my sister did some work on this. Have any one of you done any research actually into your family tree? I mean, using like a website like ancestry.com or anything like that. Have any of you done that? Just out of curiosity. Oh, okay, cool. All right, go for it. What was your experience of that? Yeah.
Wow, it was like mind-blowing. And it wasn't the ancestry.com, it was a different one. It was kind of a Spanish website, and it was a DNA test. And so we went very deep, and I got the results, and I was shocked. Turns out I'm not even Hungarian. So it's like I'm more Ukrainian, Moldavian, Greek, and a little bit of Scandinavian, and just like 1% of Hungarian, based on my DNA and based on my ancestors. So it was fun to find it out, and sometimes it explained why I'm the way I am, and it was interesting because when I first visited Greece, just for a holiday, that was in the very late 90s, early 2000. And I just fell in love with the culture, the Mediterranean culture, Greece, and the food and everything. And then yeah, and I ended up in Cyprus, which is also like a Greek-speaking country, Mediterranean country. So I had some kind of deep connection with this culture and with this kind of, the vibe of the place. And it was very interesting. It's like I'm partially, basically, a little bit Greek. So maybe I'm the right place now.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think that's an interesting point too, because I know I visited Boston one time, and I just loved that city and just felt like really at home there. And I wonder, I don't know, maybe in a past life I lived there. But have anybody else had any experience like that? Have you done any research into, or just even felt like connected to a place like Noemi has?
I have not did any ancestry kind of apps or anything like that. I've been curious about it, but I've definitely felt very connected in certain parts of the world. And Egypt is one. Aswan, I spent a great deal of time in Aswan as well as Cairo and in India. And so you wonder sometimes, with this connection, it could be just as simple as, I like the food, but you get a sense of belonging or a sense of comfort that is a little different for you. And that's what happened to me in Egypt. And so with that, I'm always, up for the trip to go over and visit. And so this time it'll be with my daughter, which will be really special. But yeah, I've definitely come across places that make me feel more at home and more grounded.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know sometimes even just for me, I was able to take a trip to Hungary actually a few years ago and got to go to the town where my grandfather was born. And so that really did make an impression on me. And but like I mean, where my grandmother is from is actually part of the Ukraine. So it's that Europe has gone through a lot of changes over the years for sure. We're just gonna change subject just briefly because I found out something interesting about October, and I'm gonna share that with you. So I just wanted to celebrate everyone here because you are all small business owners, and so for all of you women out there, yay! let's celebrate that. And I'm also getting a little signal here, so I'm going to throw up one other video here in just a second to honor our wonderful friends who are part of the Purple Heart Club. If I can get it going, there we go. Yes, and we do that to honor those wonderful folks who some of them aren't with us at the moment, but they'll always be in our hearts. So we've got a few more minutes left in the show today, so maybe we kind of go around one at a time and share, some other, if you've got some other thoughts about heritage, maybe something we haven't touched on or anything today. So let's see, who can I choose? I'm gonna go to Sarah. I'm gonna pick on you first. And
Sure. We've been talking about a lot of the positive aspects of family and heritage I have today, but I do really want to touch on something that I had to consciously make an effort to change about kind of what was normalized for a woman. And that was not always putting herself first and putting the needs of family and others first. And I fell victim to that, and it cost me so much. It cost me my health. It costs me, I think, sometimes my trajectory for growth, because you can't grow any farther than your body and your mind is prepared to embark on. And so I wrote Stress Less as a guide for specifically to the woman who wants to learn how to master self-care when it's not something that you were taught, nor is it something that is welcomed in your life. And using the analogy of the tree and of my family, while that was something that helped rooted me in understanding what, like holistic self-care and the beauty of nature and the beauty of, whole fresh fruits to take care of yourself, there was also the narrative of work and work really hard and work to, to grow your family. And sometimes that's just not possible with the circumstances that we have. And so I wanted to leave this book behind for my daughters and for my grandchildren, so that they would have the guide to know that the steps it takes to take care of yourself. And then also the journey of self-care is very much about contributing to your purpose. Because when you're well and you're healthy, you're really ready and prepared to live in the purpose that God has for you. And this book is pretty much that manifesto. Like I love all that my family has given me, but there was one thing I could change about my heritage. It would really be to nurture the whole version of yourself and living your purpose.
I love that. Well, that's a really great legacy that you are leaving behind. So that's awesome, Sarah. Marina, how about you? I'm gonna put you in here.
Well, final thoughts is for me what I leave behind. And I have dedicated my life, now that I'm in my third chapter, I think, maybe there's more, but of the things that I leave behind. In other words, my work is about helping people to reconnect with themselves, to find their self-appreciation, love of self. And by helping them change their inner world, they will contribute to changing our exterior world, changing the world as we see it. So if I can move the needle a touch, I will be very grateful. I too have written 2 books. One is Dream a Better Dream, which very much points to that. When you change yourself and dream a better dream, then you will change the world. So start with yourself always. And your GPS to Happiness is more of a hands-on guide that helps you to take the necessary steps to change you. I would very much like to leave a legacy for my children of start with yourself, love and appreciate yourself, and respect, so that you respect others, are open and embrace others, and live with curiosity and appreciation and kindness towards others.
I love that. That's so awesome. Kenya, how about you? We've got about a couple minutes left, so 1 minute.
Sure. So for me, my legacy is to definitely leave things better than how I found them. And so I've dedicated my life to serving women. Women and girls are my thing. And on a daily basis, I'm fighting, advocating for the elevation of them from a emotional standpoint, as well as from a financial standpoint. So I've written the book, The Emotional Path to Greatness, to help women to understand which path, just simple tools to use in order to understand self. I think we all can say that we've agreed today, understanding self is the first place to start for anything, anything that we want to conquer. So, leaving things a little bit better is what I hope to do.
I love that. Hey, it's the Girl Scout way. That's what I was taught. All right. And if I can get Noemi in there, what's your last thoughts here?
As everyone mentioned, so about legacy. So my legacy is to help people to heal through art. So, and that's so true that everyone can make art, and it's such a powerful way to cope with stress, anxiety, and with all kind of, mental health issues as well. So yeah, just let's make art and let's keep doing it, because everybody can do it, and let's heal together.
Ah, so good, so good. Oh my goodness, this has been a fabulous panel today, and I really do appreciate all of you for joining us and sharing your wisdom with everyone. And I hope those of you who have been out there, hope you've been taking notes and some good ideas for how you can also honor your own heritage as well. And so I do want to thank all of you for being here with us today, and I look forward to joining you again. We'll be back. Let's Talk will be back next week.
I want to say thank you for joining us today and welcome you back next Sunday as we once again are joined by a panel of subject matter experts that will explore and focus in on our fabulous lives. Until next Sunday.